We all speak of sovereignty and territorial integrity. All of us agree. It's a vital principle. It's a bedrock of global rules. After the Second World War, the longest standing illegal, I would say, presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India. What we saw in Kashmir. Now, we went to the UN. What was an invasion was made into a dispute. So, the attacker and the victim were put on par. Who were the culpable parties? UK, Canada, Belgium, Australia, USA. So, pardon me, I have some question marks on that whole document.
You heard India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. He was speaking at the Raisina Dialogue in New Delhi. He calls a spade when he says the attacker and the victim were given the same treatment at the United Nations on the Kashmir issue. He was referring to how parts of Kashmir were illegally occupied by Pakistan through an invasion in 1947, only 2 months after India was partitioned at independence. In the context of India's sovereignty over Kashmir, he questions the selective application of global rules by 5 Western countries. Hello and welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm Unman Bhattacharya. Let's connect the dots of the hypocrisy of the West in the existing world order and why the world needs a new global order where the global South has as much weight as the global North. After India's partition in 1947, Pakistani intruders invaded parts of Kashmir in India in 1947-48. India's first Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru's decision to take the Kashmir issue to the United Nations in 1948 is widely seen as a strategic blunder. The United Nations announced a ceasefire at a time when Indian security forces were winning, stopping India that was defeating Pakistan in the battle in its tracks and allowing Pakistan to illegally occupy Indian territory. So why did India go to the UN? Nehru came under pressure from Louis Mountbatten, the Governor General of India, and the British government to go to the UN. The Indian government seems to have believed that a quote-unquote neutral forum like the United Nations would agree with its position and the Kashmir issue would be resolved once and for all. But the Nehru government had misjudged the situation. India faced British and American hostility instead. The US saw in Pakistan a valuable asset against the Soviet Union. Britain supported the US stand. Soon, Nehru regretted going to the UN. He told Mountbatten that power politics and not ethics were driving the UN, which was being completely run by the Americans. The same power structure of 1945, when the United Nations was established, runs the world body even today. That's why Dr. Jaishankar says this.
We need a strong UN, but a strong UN requires a fair UN. A strong, a global order must have some basic consistency of standards. We have military coups to our east in Myanmar. They are no. We have them even more regularly to the west. You know where? They seem to be okay. So I think it's important to audit the working of the world for the last 8 decades and be honest about it, and to understand today that the balances, the shareholdings in the world have changed. We need a different conversation. We need, frankly, in that sense, a different order.
So Dr. Jaishankar is underlining the need for basic consistency of standards for a fair global order. Let's look at Bangladesh now in the light of Western hypocrisy. During her India visit, US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard expressed concern over the persecution of minorities, Hindus, Christians and Buddhists in Bangladesh. She said, and I quote, "The long-time unfortunate persecution, killing and abuse of religious minorities like Hindus, Buddhists, Christians and others has been a major area of concern for the US government and President Trump and his administration. On the rise of Islamic terrorism and terrorist elements in Bangladesh, Gabad had this to say. The threat of Islamist terrorists and the global effort of different terror groups are rooted in the same ideology and objective, which is to rule or govern with an Islamic caliphate. This obviously affects people of any other religion other than the one that they find acceptable, and they choose to carry this out with terror and very violent ways and means. And this is how she rounded up her argument on the rise in extremism in Bangladesh.
You know, President Trump, through his first administration in the presidency, and it continues now, has been very clear about his commitment to defeating this threat of Islamist terrorism that has unfortunately plagued us, has and continues to pose a direct threat to the American people. But we see how it's been impacting people here in India, in Bangladesh, currently ongoing in Syria, Israel, and different countries in the Middle East. So this is a threat that I know Prime Minister Modi also takes seriously, and one where the leaders of our two countries will work together to try to identify and defeat that threat.
That's a clear articulation of Trump administration's concerns regarding what's going on in Bangladesh. Her remarks rattled Bangladesh, which called them misleading. The White House then did a balancing act, but at the same time, it did not make a U-turn on Gabad's remarks.
We condemn any instances of violence or intolerance directed toward members of minority communities in any country and have welcomed measures taken by Bangladesh's interim government to ensure safety and security for all in Bangladesh. That's what we're watching, that's what we expect, and that will be what continues.
It's a fact that not only have religious minorities faced physical attacks in Bangladesh, but their places of worship have also been destroyed. Not just that, Pakistan is using Bangladesh as a strategic weapon against India. But one must note here that the same Muhammad Yunus-led government that is at the receiving end of critical scrutiny by the Trump administration today had the backing of the Biden administration. See this report. On 21st June 2023, during a media conference, the then Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina had said that there would be no problem for her to hold on to power if she leased out St. Martin's Island. But she added, "I have no intention to go to power by selling the country's assets." Hasina did not take the name of any country at that time, but speculation has been rife on US interest in the island. St. Martin's location, its proximity to the Bay of Bengal, and its maritime boundary with Myanmar could be the reasons behind international interest in the island, particularly from the United States and China. A military presence on the island would strengthen their capabilities in the region. Here's where the role of the US deep state in carrying out regime change operations comes into focus. So what is the deep state? The term deep state refers to a secretive and hierarchical network of members within US intelligence agencies such as the FBI and the CIA. These entities often carry out covert operations to destabilize democratically elected governments, ensuring that US foreign policy interests are served. These individuals are deeply embedded in financial institutions, industrial sectors, as well as NGOs and media outlets. So how does the deep state operate? To give you one example, George Soros, an American billionaire hedge investor, is accused of establishing a global network of NGOs that he funds. These NGOs often focus on human rights, poverty alleviation, education, and women and minority rights. It is alleged that through these well-funded NGOs, he helped Democrats and US intelligence exercise power, wage bloodless wars, orchestrate mass protests, and topple inconvenient leaders. India has similar concerns with regard to functioning of some foreign-funded NGOs in its territory. Here's Dr. Jaishankar sharing his concerns on political interference by the West.
We speak today of political interference. when the West goes out into other countries, it's apparently in pursuance of democratic freedoms. When other countries come into the West, it seems to have a very malign intention. So I think we need, if to have an order, there must be fairness.
On the question of whether the West respects sovereignty and territorial integrity of other countries, a former Indian ambassador to Russia and diplomatic advisor to 3 Indian prime ministers, Ambassador Prabhat Shukla, has this to say. Since the early 1980s, the Western countries have been using an anti-India separatist movement as an instrument of pressure on India. The aim is to make the government in Delhi conform to the US-led foreign policy objective. In the 1980s, it was the Afghan war against the USSR. Today, it is the Ukraine war against Russia. In both cases, India had followed its own policy. This is a clear indication that the West plays anti-India games to the extent of threatening its sovereignty by allowing their territory to become safe havens for anti-India separatists whenever India engages closely with Russia against its will. In a recent interview, Dr. Jaishankar said the virtues of the old world order are exaggerated as it always had the element of might is right. He cautions that as America retreats under the Donald Trump administration, what if we see more of that? So to sum it up, in Dr. Jaishankar's words, India would like the new world order to be evolutionary and flexible. It should reflect the present global realities and not of the post-1945 world when the rules were weighed in favor of the West. The post-1945 Western order was buttressed by treaty alliances, whereas India has been pursuing a more flexible form of relationship, such as in the Quad. So India favors a new world order that is flexible, unlike the treaty-based concepts that are typical of the old order. Leaving you with some food for thought. Is there a continuing danger that the vested interests of the old order shall stall the dawn of a new era to every extent they can, like by continuing to stall UNSC reforms? Or can the Global South collectively overcome that challenge and slowly but surely move towards a reshaped global governance architecture where it has a voice equal to that of the global North? The next few decades could be crucial.
And there you see it on your screen, drogue deployment.
Drogue descent rate nominal.
And as those parachute crews
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
A space capsule approached Earth's atmosphere. As it neared the sea, parachutes deployed, slowing its descent.
We're in section 2, 4.800 landing response.
Moments later, the capsule splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean.
Preparing for now. As for the recovery teams themselves, we started the do is absolutely unbeatable. So just to kind of finish off what I was saying,
This marked the long-awaited return of NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore after spending 9 months stranded in space.
Some waves, some thumbs up, and some smiles.
elation and cheers there.
Dolphins swam around the spacecraft.
There between dolphin cam back again. we can see that
A rescue team towed the capsule onto a boat. And now you can see Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore exiting the space capsule. The 2 astronauts were stuck on the International Space Station for months. The original return spacecraft, Boeing Starliner, was found to be unsafe for the trip back to Earth. This meant they had to stay in space much longer than planned.
You know, the thing I think back of this whole time frame is how really resilient Butch and Sunny were the whole time. I mean, they launched on what was going to be a short test flight with the crew flight test vehicle with Boeing. And then they moved very quickly into station increment operations, and they became seamlessly part of the International Space Station. And they did that because they're experienced astronauts.
Indian-American astronaut Sunita Williams, the current commander of the space station, is a retired Navy officer. She joined NASA in 1998. During her career, she has spent 322 days in space and completed 9 spacewalks. Barry Wilmore first went to space in 2009 on the Space Shuttle Atlantis. Before this mission, he had spent 178 days in space. He has worked as a flight engineer and commander on previous ISS missions. He did research on how plants grow in space, how space affects the human body, and changes on Earth. In this Boeing mission, Wilmore was the commander and Williams was the pilot. Finally, their journey home began when a SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule carrying Williams and Wilmore departed the International Space Station on Tuesday morning. After a 17-hour trip, they splashed down off the coast of Florida. This Crew Dragon capsule had been docked at the ISS since September 2024 after originally bringing NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Russian astronaut Alexander Gorbanov to the station. 2 empty seats were reserved for Williams and Wilmore's return. The return had to be delayed because a new crew needed to arrive first to replace them. That replacement crew, called Crew 10, reached the ISS on Sunday. The team included NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers, Japanese astronaut Takuya Onishi, and Russian astronaut Kirill Peskov. They launched from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida on Friday. So why did Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore get stuck? Williams and Wilmore had traveled to the ISS on Boeing's CST-100 Starliner as part of its first crewed test flight. This mission was part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, which works with private companies to develop spacecraft for astronaut transport. By doing this, NASA aims to focus more on exploring deep space, including missions to the Moon and future human missions to Mars. During the 25-hour journey to the ISS, the Starliner developed helium leaks and a thruster malfunctioned. When it arrived on the 6th of June, 4 more thrusters failed, delaying its docking. Although engineers managed to fix 4 of the 5 failed thrusters, NASA decided the spacecraft was too unsafe for the astronauts to return in. They sent the Starliner back to Earth without any crew on board, leaving Williams and Wilmore stuck on the ISS. In August 2024, NASA chose to bring them back using a SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule. This capsule, Crew Dragon 9, had launched on the 29th of September 2024 and had been docked at the ISS since then. However, bringing them home earlier would have left only 1 US astronaut on the station, which would have limited research and emergency response capabilities. Once their replacement crew arrived on Crew 10, Williams and Wilmore were finally able to return home. Living in space for months can affect the human body, causing muscle loss, weakened bones, and other health challenges. So how did they manage to survive in space for so long? Even though their stay was much longer than planned, Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore stayed healthy. They even performed a spacewalk together in January. Life on the International Space Station is very organized. They have a daily routine of exercise, work, and free time. To keep their bones and muscles strong, they exercise regularly on a treadmill and a resistance machine. Listen to this.
Been there a long time, and so they've lost some bone density, they've lost some muscle mass simply because they haven't been working against gravity. They've probably lost some cardiovascular fitness as well because the heart is a muscle and that doesn't have to work as hard when you're in microgravity. To counteract that, they've been spending 90 minutes to 2 hours of every single day doing exercise while they're on the station. But when they come back to Earth, it's still a big difference going from that weightlessness to suddenly being under gravity again. So they have to adapt to that both physically and mentally. So they will be under direct medical supervision for a couple of weeks. Then they'll continue to do physiotherapy to make sure that they're getting back to normal as quickly as possible.
So have astronauts been stuck in space before? Yes. Williams and Wilmore are not the first astronauts to face an extended stay in space. In 2022 to 2023, US astronaut Frank Rubio spent 371 days on the ISS due to issues with the Soyuz spacecraft that brought him there. In 1991, Soviet astronaut Sergei Krikalev was stranded on the Mir space station for 311 days after the Soviet Union collapsed. He returned to a newly independent Russia. While Sunita Williams landed on Earth from space, villagers in her ancestral village in India's Gujarat celebrated her safe return to Earth with dancing and firecrackers. Earlier, villagers had prayed for a safe return.
Sunita Williams is from Jhulasan. We are all happy as she is returning safely. We have an Akhand Jyot lit for the last 9 months. Earlier too, she encountered difficulties and we are praying that she returns safely.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the return of NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore. Taking to social media platform X, Prime Minister Modi wrote, and I quote, "Welcome back Crew 9, the Earth missed you. Theirs has been a test of grit, courage and the boundless human spirit. Sunita Williams and the Crew 9 astronauts have once again shown us what perseverance truly means. Their unwavering determination in the face of the vast unknown will forever inspire millions." Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore's safe return is not just a victory for space exploration. It is a powerful reminder of human resilience and teamwork. That's all in this edition of Connecting the Dots. We'll see you next week with more raging issues. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us in the Delhi newsroom. This is Munmun Bhattacharya signing off. Take care and stay safe.